All right, we are live, everybody. Everybody in Facebook land. I'm Steve Rosenberg, Vice President of Investor Education for Mind Property Management. First of all, I want to thank BiggerPockets for allowing us this platform to be able to have this conversation. And I want to thank Mind Property Management for allowing all of us to get together and have this conversation that last time we did was amazing. And if you like the last episode, this episode of Superstars is just going to get better. So the information that we are going to talk about in the property management rental industry is by far the most experienced investors, educators, and operators probably in the country. So if you don't have a pen and paper, I would say make sure that you go get one, because there's going to be a lot of information, current knowledge that we are going to make sure that you get, you consume, and it is all walks of property management, short-term rentals, turnkey business, upper-end rental properties, operational, you name it, and we are going to discuss it tonight with this team of, to say bluntly, rock stars are going to have this conversation. So I want to make sure that if you have comments, you put them in the comment section so that we can answer them or do our best to answer them. If you're watching live, please make sure you give a thumbs up and let us know where you're watching from, because obviously, as we all know, every part of the country is dealing with this situation differently. And so there's different laws, different regulations. So we'd like to know where you're from and let us know that you're watching. So give us a thumbs up, because Facebook likes the fact that we ask people to give a thumbs up. And if we do a good job, they will ask us to come back. And that's what we want to happen. So first of all, let me introduce my co-host, my very good friend, Alex Osenenko. Alex, how are you doing, buddy?
Yo, I'm doing great. Great to see everyone joining. This is going to be a great show. I'm actually anxious to learn. Last one I watched twice. I'm not kidding you. I went back and watched twice. There was just so much information. And when you're in the show doing the interview, you're only catching kind of key points, writing it down, digging deeper. Like Chris Clothier, man, I'm going to interview him today.
Yeah, we're digging into Chris, man.
Lisa, I haven't spoken to her in a long time, so it's be interesting. But let me venture out a guess. Last time I like got it on the nose. It's all about gamifying everything, right? That's what life is all about. So I'd say between all of us here, we have about 15,000 homes under management in various, mostly, I guess, long-term, but some short-term. That's my guess. We're going to go through introductions and find out what that guess is. So I'm a chief growth officer with Mind Property Management. We are managing about 8,500 properties. And I'm going to turn it over to the person on my right, which is Chris.
Hey guys, I'm Chris Clothier. Happy to be here. Thanks, Steve and Alex, for having us on here. I am a partner with REI Nation, formerly a company called Memphis Invest, and we are managing a little over 6,000 long-term single-family rentals for passive investors in 7 different cities across the Southeast.
Fantastic.
And with that accent, how do you not like Chris, man? I just got to say, he's just got that Southern drawl, man. I love it.
Well, his haircut is like 2 weeks overdue.
His haircut, his accent, his glasses, man. He's the whole package, man.
Am I turning red yet? Y'all are like,
Ali, maybe we give you the honors next.
Yeah, hey everybody. Ali Nazar. I'm president and COO of Mind. Work with Alex and Steve. And as Alex mentioned, we have about 8,500 units under management across 15 markets across the U.S., kind of along the West Coast and then along the southern strip of the country. And we'll turn 4 years old next month. And one of the innovative things we've done is built our own property management technology stack from the ground up. So we have our own accounting, our own customer service systems. Everything is kind of homegrown and born out of our previous stint as founding and running a REIT called Waypoint Homes that was born out of the foreclosure crisis. So a lot of that same founding team left that and started this. And so, yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you, Ali. Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Four. I'm actually in Southern California, San Diego County area. We do actually kind of all three sides. We do sales, we do unfurnished property management, and we do vacation rental. So kind of seeing this from all three sides of things, and happy to be here. Thanks.
How many properties do you manage, Lisa?
Well, we manage about 300. Yeah, I'm the small guy probably here. We manage about 350 homes, but like I said, we do unfurnished and furnished rentals as well. So we also, so we manage about 120 vacation rentals.
I'll put that in a tally. Thank you, Lisa.
We'll say small but mighty, Lisa. Small but mighty.
Well, if you multiply the workload of a vacation rental to the long-term department, you can triple that. Yeah.
May I say that Lisa's probably making more money than anyone else here on this show. All right, Mike Catalano.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for having me. Mike Catalano here. I'm with CEO of Real Estate Connections and Next Gen Property Ventures. We're a residential property management firm. We manage predominantly in Silicon Valley, Sacramento, and Santa Cruz, Capitola area. I've been doing this for about 25 years as a real estate investor, property manager. I've seen the ups and downs of many different things. If you count me answering phone calls when I was 10 years old on the property management hotline, it's more like 35 to 40 years that I've been doing it. So it's definitely in the blood. And we manage about just under 2,000 doors currently. And, we really concentrate on helping people build a portfolio as far as rentals, a portfolio of investment properties, as far as investments for people who are looking to expand their portfolio. I also kind of specialize in acquiring property management companies. I've done 13 on number 14 as of right now. So that's kind of my specialty.
Mike, I noticed that the yacht you're on is not rocking very much. Do you have good ballast or something? I'm not sure what's going on, but it's looking good, man.
I'm Italian. I walk with my hands. I have potential energy that's always moving, so I don't sit still much. So you'll see me rocking and moving. So I have a lot.
So it's not the yacht. The yacht is not moving. Good to hear. Okay, good to hear. Well, thanks to everybody. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that this is not the time that we all, as operators, think that we should be spending our time, but I can tell you that all the people on, BiggerPockets and Facebook and Mind and everybody, all of our respective companies are really going to get a lot of information, because as investors, this is the information that every investor is like a sponge right now. They want to know the data. They want to know the information. You guys are all the trusted experts in this field, and everyone's looking to you, to other industry leaders to say what to do when I have my rental property. So first of all, I just, thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate you guys willing to donate your time to this, because it's much more valuable than I think you realize.
Steve-O, let's dive into the data.
Okay.
I think a lot of people, I would be curious to know, because there's one article in New York Times, I believe last week, that 30% of multifamily residents were delinquent, and that was really concerning. A lot of people thought, wow, it's a nationwide delinquency. Is that the case? Well, in single family market, which is most of us are in, 1 to 4 units for the most part. I'm just going to share some numbers, and you guys go around. We're going to go same kind of route. Maybe Chris, Ali, Lisa, and Mike kind of just go around and share some numbers. Just going to talk about, as of April 19th, across our portfolio, 16 markets, 8,500 units, we're seeing about 7.26% delinquency, which is about 3.5% higher than normal. So that across the board. So 7.26% is a lot better than 30. So you can tell that single family has different advantages as an asset class, and resilience, I guess, at least so far, resilience under this unprecedented crisis is one of them, seemingly. Now, we've also signed, our leases are down about 4%. So typically we sign about 51 leases. We're signed 49 last week, which is, again, not a big drop, but what a big drop is in move-out notices. People seem to be staying in place. So 36% drop in move-out notices. And one kind of a little bit concerning issue that I want to bring up maybe later for discussion are new property management clients. Service agreements are down about 61%. That's what we're seeing.
Alex, just curiosity, just in those numbers, when you say the move-out notices, are the renewal notices increasing? So are tenants not moving out and they're renewing, or they're just not moving out and going month to month?
Excellent question. That's more Ali. I think I will punt
Okay.
it to Ali if you don't mind. Ali, you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, I don't have the data. I think I think when you're in a down market in a from a property management perspective, you really try to keep occupancy. And so, like, in this situation where we're not sure what's going to happen, we've been really aggressive to move to try to renew people. And I think, in general, people don't want to move right now. So what we've seen is a decrease in leasing volume, as Alex has said. But it's interesting, though, because we've seen about a 25% drop in the prospect volume coming in. But our conversion rates are going up because the people who do need to move are way more like, there's no tire kickers out there right now. Like, if you're out there trying to move, you're trying to move. So I think there's a big balance here. I don't know that I think some of the early returns in terms of leasing volume is still kind of TBD. And from a delinquency perspective, we're proud of having that delinquency down to sub 8%. But I think we're all kind of bracing for May. But that's where we think this is really going to hit, because April, people still had a little bit of money, but now some people have been working for 6 weeks now in California. So like their reserves are dwindling. They're maybe getting some stimulus, but they want to save that money for food and other things. So we're bracing for May to be a much worse delinquency month. But from a renewal perspective, I think we're seeing an uptick. I don't have the number for you though.
Got it. Yeah.
Chris, what are you seeing now? Chris, your business is the Turnkey, which is like you sort of full circle for investors. You help them acquire turnkey asset as well as put it under management. What are you seeing in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, well, as far as the management is concerned, we were everybody was when in month. We weren't 100% sure what was going to happen in April, and that uncertainty, I will tell you, it was actually a really good thing because it made us plan for a lot of different scenarios. Now, I will say that we feel very blessed so far that the scenario that's happening as of today, the 21st of April, we're actually ahead as far as collections of where we were in the month of February, and just slightly behind where we were in March. And so we historically, looking back on where we've been recently, we're exactly where we have been. We're at about 92% of billed rents collected. What we see the difference, though, and there is a difference in the numbers, is that of that 8%, roughly 8%, there's a slightly higher number of those residents that have not made a payment at all. And so, whereas we're accustomed to everyone have already made a payment by this time and doing some type of workout, I mean, clearly there is a very small percentage of the portfolio that so far has been unable to make a payment on April's rent. We feel like in the end of a normal month, we collect 98 to 98.5% of billed rents. And this month we feel like that'll be probably closer to 97 on a global level. So we're not now what percentage of that will be a partial payment and what will be no payment. We're still not sure yet. But here's the other thing that was so good about April being such an unknown, is that it really forced us also not only to plan for lots of different eventualities, but to also plan on how we were going to over communicate with the residents. And we really put in I would say a very aggressive effort to make contact and to open the communication and to keep it going. So we're as Ali mentioned, May, we believe, is going to be tough, and it may be a little tougher than April. But by tougher, we just mean it may take more work. I mean, we have gone to work to get where we're at. We still think we can have the same type of performance in May. It just may take more work, more of the team, more flexibility. But so far, our number of applications are up. Our move outs are always down. We've always had a program to keep residents in their homes. We only do 2-year leases, and we have a 5-year average length of stay. What we've seen now is that more people this month, rather than renewing in June, July, and August when their lease may be up, they're saying, I want to renew right now. And with that comes re-verification of employment and ability. So we actually feel really, really good about where, kind of we stand with the whole portfolio overall, but also kind of aware that May and probably June too are going to just be, they're going to be tough. You're just going to have to go to work and just be ready to really grind to get the rents collected and get the residents connected to.
Gotcha. Lisa, what are you seeing in SoCal? Maybe you can touch on some STRs, short-term rentals, as you probably get hit pretty hard with those, right?
0% occupancy. Fabulous number. It doesn't help that the localities have actually banned doing any rentals whatsoever. So, of course, we put out to the local agents and everything if they had, because I on quite a few text chains and with friends, and I'm finding people, with, agents that have clients that, are a necessity. They have to move. They're here. That, I've got clients too that, transferring from out of state, doctors and stuff like that are being transferred, that they have no choice but to find a house. And we've been looking, and it's really tough. And we're coming up against competitive multiple bids still. It's, the properties, in certain price ranges are not lasting on the sales side of things. And so, trying to go after that market, at a monthly rental that falls outside of the jurisdiction of a vacation rental, and trying to go after that clientele to see if there's anybody that we can do temporary housing for to help in that situation. Hasn't been all that successful, but, we're trying to put our feelers out there wherever we can. On a long-term side of things, our delinquency was actually down this month. We 2% delinquency, 2.6% delinquency. So we actually sent anybody that proactively reached out to us and said, hey, I'm having problems as we're coming up to the due date. We sent them a link and just had a questionnaire for them to say, what are you looking at? Like, what have you done to try and supplement income, or, some type of help of what's, anything that you've applied for, just kind of giving us some ideas to where they were at in the progress and what proactive measures they've taken. Actually, almost half of the people that even proactively reached out to us and said, hey, we need help and probably do a payment plan, they ended up paying the rent in full. So we actually are doing, it was interesting. So I think that they were trying to get ahead of the game, and they realized, hey, we can actually pay. We might as well pay this now because we are going to have to pay it eventually. But like everybody else, we're looking and expecting that May and June are probably going to be the problematic months. But our rentals are flying off the shelf. I mean, within 48 hours, we've got, multiple applications. Of course, delinquencies are down, vacancies are down with that. We don't have a whole lot coming on the market. People aren't wanting to move if they don't have to, but that's pretty much what we're seeing down here. The surprising part is the sales side of things, is when you're watching things that are just flying off the shelves and multiple, competitive bids right now with everything going on, but the inventory is really low.
So you're talking sales are flying, like you're talking, first of all, for people who are watching, this is San Diego. This is like a slice of the world that is apparently different. 2% delinquency. I mean, come now.
2.6, yeah.
That's great. But seriously, like you're closing properties, you're selling homes?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. There's a lot of inventory that's being held back because there's this balance between what's essential to sell and what's not. And then obviously you have people that are occupying properties, and they're not wanting people in their homes, and if you don't have to sell right now, you really shouldn't be putting it on the market. So there's inventory that's definitely being held back. But, there is some that is not being held back because people do have to sell, that either they're in it or not, and vacant properties. And I have one client right now, I mean, they're up against the wall, and they're coming, in less than 60 days, and they're heading this direction, and, coming for their second year residency for a medical doctor. And, their trip here is planned on a date that they can't move. And so, trying to find them a place has been really difficult. Every time we jump on a place within 24 hours of it being listed, and it's multiple offers on the table that are coming. And so it's really competitive still in certain price ranges. But yeah, it's interesting to see that on the sales side.
Mike, what's happening in Bay Area, Sacramento, Santa Cruz?
Yeah, so it's sorry for the connectivity issues here. Probably too many people in the house on Wi-Fi right now between kids and wife. But anyway, so we're very similar on the collection side. We're about 97% collected across the board. We also have some personal out-of-state investments that are at about 96%. So I'm pretty happy about that so far. But I think, really, and most of those actually have paid a portion of the rent and some kind of partial payment. We haven't really started setting up any payment plans just yet. I remember just like last week, we were just about to write our first payment plan out together for a tenant. And I've been very involved in the companies, helping out the property managers and getting really putting this together, making sure we're following all the laws, making sure that we're being as empathetic as possible because, you know, landlords are in this, tenants are in this, everyone is really in the same situation where we're trying to, you know, work together as a team. And we were writing the first one up and we kind of looked at it and said, how do they know they're going to be able to pay this? How do they know what they can pay for May? They don't know this yet. I mean, most people have not received their unemployment. They have not received the stimulus check. And let's be honest, in the Bay Area, they're probably Silicon Valley are not going to get a stimulus check. And it would maybe, if they're lucky, cover a third of the rent just because the rents are so high here. So, you know, what do you really do? So we kind of set in place, let's just wait until May 10th. And let's see what happens. Keep the communication lines open. We did something very similar to Lisa's. We sent them a form. They fill out the form. You know, we want to see how they're impacted by this, if they filed for unemployment, what their EDD number is, you know, all things like that to keep the communication open. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions that I've seen, number one, is that the landlords in this country are not being understanding. And you see a lot of things in news, you know, people not paying, or there was one recently, some guy went and looked up if someone received their stimulus check, whether these stories are true or not. The bottom line is that every single owner we have that we've called and said a tenant's not going to be able to pay rent, or they're going to pay a partial, or they want to make accommodations, every single one of them has been understanding. Right. And the other side of it is on the tenant side, because a landlord looks at a tenant and says, hey, they're not really going to look to do anything. You're looking at 97+% of people who are still trying to make things right. So I think the misconception is that most people are not going to pay their rent. Most landlords are looking to just evict. And the bottom line is 95% of the world is trying to work together on this. So there's that small 5% that actually makes me worried that the government is going to step in and do something to combat those bad landlords or poor tenants that are not really actually there to work it out. So what we've noticed is that people are working together. How it's actually going to end up, we don't know. I think that May and June are certainly going to be really the telltale how this ultimately ends up.
Yeah, I really love the idea of like we see more and more across multiple things, like whether it's your kids' schools or the work, or, you know, landlords and tenants. It's like people are just really working together. This is really, really good to see. This is, I think, hopefully this pandemic will help. We'll just bridge us closer together. But Steve, unless you see some comments online, let me know if you want to dive into the next subject.
No, someone asked Lisa what price ranges are the most competitive. I'm not really sure the question, because I think that depends on what she operates in 3 different realms. So I'm not really sure.
I think it's for the sales.
I'm gathering they're probably talking on the sales side. So like one particular client that we're looking in is, you know, is in like the 800,000 range. But, you know, where they're looking, it's not like they're trying, you know, in Carlsbad right by the beach, you know, 5 minutes from the beach. Where they're looking, it's a pretty average price range. But yeah,
average for who? Average for who?
Average.
That's
for
relative,
that
right?
Area. But,
okay.
Yeah, so it's you know, it's pretty average for that particular area per se. So it's not like they're looking at stuff that's very rare to find in that price range and a small amount of inventory. But yeah, it's very competitive in that price range.
Okay. And for those of you watching on Facebook or YouTube, if you have questions, feel free to ask them, and we'll do our best to answer them for you, or where you're asking from as well, so we can know who's watching. So I guess I've got a question for Chris. I'll kind of start this off because he clearly is the best looking gentleman on this with the hair. He's got the hair that we all wish we had after how many weeks of 10 weeks of COVID, and you have the perfect hair. So Chris, how is Turnkey affected by all this, right? When you kind of step back at maybe the 10,000 foot view, how do you see this affecting you currently and moving out of the pandemic timeframe when they release everything? How do you see this affecting your business model?
Well, 2 things. Number one, the way it's currently already affected us is that an investor that was not 100% sure on the plan they had in front of them, maybe somebody was a little more open to what they were going to do, may have stepped back and said, I'm gonna wait right now. I'm gonna slow down what I'm doing. We were writing between 22 and 25 contracts a week, and today we're writing between 15 and 18 contracts a week. So we, kind of course, in the turnkey model, the way we operate is we have the niche that we buy. We have the property that we purchase, and we're already buying and renovating. We own everything on the front end. We sell them with a resident in place. So I have inventory for weeks out in front of us. So we have the homes right now. It's really an issue of, does an investor need to move forward or not? And there's a lot of investors, I think, that are trying to time the market. We're hearing a lot of people saying, I'm going to wait because the really, really good deals are coming. And the only advice you can give to somebody at that time is, that's they have to do what feels right and best for them. The reality of timing this market, each of us is in a different city. You guys are investing or managing properties or mine is investing in a bunch of or managing properties on the West Coast. We're in the Southeast. You've got two other investors that are on San Diego and San Francisco. Each of these markets is different. And for a buyer looking to buy them, there's a real possibility that none of these markets are going to be affected at all from a price standpoint, because we're certainly not overbuilt right now. And so I guess from to not get too far off your question, it's only affected us in the fact that there are some investors that they're not ready to move forward. They thought they were, and there's more that are stepping back saying, I'm just going to wait and see what happens next, which that's not a bad thing. In no way am I saying that giving advice that they should be moving forward, but the people that are buying today, they're buying eyes wide open. I mean, they understand exactly the market they're buying in. They understand the reasoning behind their investments, the return they're expecting, the experience that they want to have. And, so we've seen a little bit of that dip. We've gone from, like I said, 22 to 25 to 15 to 18. And in the future, I think as a company, we're going to choose most likely to do fewer houses, if that makes sense. We're going to really concentrate on the best house for the best client, because even for us, I think anybody that's heard me talk before, we were moving towards doing 1,000 homes a year. And certainly had the capacity and the team and the demand. And so through all this, we've kind of rethought that. And, is that just to see because we want to be the biggest, or is that because it's the best plan to have the best houses and the best experience for the investor? And we've really I think right now we've zoned in on, let's concentrate on being the best we can be rather than the biggest we can be, because that will help us, grow or do whatever we need to do, as we go forward.
So if I was an investor, and I was looking to get into the turnkey business model that you have done such a great, fantastic job creating, basically you guys have created a very large industry or carved out a very great niche for yourself. What would you tell the turnkey investor that's saying, Chris, what should I do? What is your advice to me? So what would you tell that person?
I would tell them, number one, be very patient. Make sure that you are, you have your plan and why you're looking to invest. I would also tell them to ask a lot of questions. That's something that I'm not going to talk about my book here, but I wrote a book a few years ago. That's what it's all about. It's about getting to know right now exactly who it is you're going to do business with and why you're going to do business with them. I think that I'm a firm believer that an investor can do well in any market at any time. It just takes having the right connections, the right patience, and having a crystal clear identity.
Strategy.
As to why am I doing this? And so for any investor that has that, I say stick to it. And an investor that doesn't, I say take a step back, make sure you understand exactly why you're investing and who you're investing with and how they're going to help you get to the place you're trying to go with your investments. And it's kind of funny, like nothing's changed. In this time, of course, COVID-19 has changed our entire world, but it shouldn't necessarily change the way we invest. We should always be smart, always be patient, always be diligent with, our due diligence. That none of that's changed in this environment. So,
I agree. Mike, go for it.
One thing that investors I feel are going to learn, these are our current ones or ones that are looking to invest in the future, is really understand that you should have some sort of reserve. Do not have yourself run so thin. There's a lot of people that are, if you're sitting here at a negative and you can't pay your mortgage or your bills for a few months out at least, in some big cases, at least 6 months, to be prepared for something like this. I mean, we really should have learned a lot of this in 2008.
Great point.
But I think at this point, you really have to make sure you're prepared for this, because there's some people that say, hey, I want to own real estate, but are you ready to own it? Or do you understand what that means? Are you going to be able to go a few months without rent, whatever the reason may be? Are you going to be able to replace the roof, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a single family home? So I think this will hopefully get people to rethink once again, which we probably should have 12 years ago, and we should have learned from that. And I think we did a lot, but I still think that people are running behind a little bit.
Yeah. Let me sort of touch on this real quick, Steve. There's some questions on there's some comments and questions around best practices for landlords, and I think I want to give Ali an opportunity. Like, we've done a lot at Mine. We have a coronavirus task force, and we have a lot of properties and have to work out a lot of deals. So maybe, Ali, can you walk us through some of the best practices that we found through like a lot of research and trying and actually executing? What are some of the best practices for people who are potentially self-managing right now?
You mean just to manage the coronavirus?
Manage the collections, manage the tenants, manage their properties.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris is on point. I don't think you change things dramatically. I mean, I think communication, as I think everybody here has mentioned, is super key. We've had, I think, close to 500 responses for residents saying they have a COVID-19 related issue. So like, we're working through those and trying to keep in close contact. And each of the different jurisdictions we work in, I think one thing that's really important if you're managing property is you need to understand what are the laws that have changed in the jurisdictions you're working in, because that's happening very quickly. So like, get plugged into the right landlord associations or other places that can get you up to date. So we have multiple people researching for us. We actually, under Alex's leadership, published what we call the Situation Room on our website that has resources for both owners and residents that are COVID related, that helps them to figure out how to navigate this kind of tricky time. But so I think part of this is about communication and understanding, like, keeping abreast of this kind of drastically changing situation all the time. When you're a property manager, you're kind of in the middle. You have to communicate to owners and to residents. So if you're a fee property manager, so like, having knowledge and being up to speed is super key, because you want to violate the trust relationships you have on both sides. So I think that's where you start, is just being really smart. So we have at our task force, we're lucky to be a bigger company with some resources. So we've put like the best people on our team, people who are representative of residents, of owners, and of others, and we come 3 times a week, review any new information, and deal with the problems that are arising. So on the payment front, we talked about our delinquency. We've been, we have over 90% of our residents pay electronically. It's something that we pushed over time from the beginning of Mine's history. So it's been a little bit easier for us to manage that. But we've also shut our offices down, and we're taking this opportunity to move kind of the goalposts from our perspective on virtual property management, which is kind of in our blood anyway of how we want to operate. So we're doing more and more virtually. And it's becoming kind of the norm. Actually, people are learning about Zoom and all these different things to work virtually. So as an example of how we've kind of used kind of this opportunity to streamline our operations in California, you're required to do a pre-move out inspection when someone's moving out. So we're doing those virtually now. And we have the resident take us through, and we have a guided way for them to do it. It really helps us to continually fulfill the law, but also reduce the exposure of our field teams and to get them done more efficiently. It costs, there's drive time and all sorts of things for us to go do such things. So I think there's looking at our whole operation and seeing where can we kind of virtualize and get more and more efficient was one thing. Obviously, like, paramount is safety. So we really focused first on our employees, closing the offices, our field teams, making sure they have hand sanitizer, and gloves and masks, making sure that we minimize the interactions that they have to have with people. But the Bay Area, where we're based, was the first to go under a shelter in place. And so we were deemed an essential service right in the beginning. So we kind of had a flavor of how to operate here under these kind of tighter controls. So I think we've been able to, figure out the dials for safety. And then, as we discussed earlier, minimizing vacancy is huge. And then just communicating on all fronts. I think for owners, we have a cohort of owners right now who aren't getting any rent coming in. And, we have a very stepped up communication pattern with them. I think the most important thing we can do is just make sure that they know that we're on this and we're working to do everything we can. We've provided services to or resources to the residents to go find other places to get assistance if they need. We started a fundraiser. We partnered with a company or a nonprofit called the Rent Relief Foundation. We can refer residents there, and we're raising money for that fund as well. So, as I said, everything that we can do to provide people connections and information out there and get them paid up in rent is all that we can do. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Ali. Lisa, I've got a question for you. A lot of people have gone into the short-term rental Airbnb business model or Airbnb arbitrage business model. And obviously we know that you have been hugely affected. Your business model has been affected by this. So to say it's been impacted obviously is a moot point because we know it is, but how are you dealing with it? I guess the first question, and how are you pivoting the owners to have the discussion to say, we may need to look at some other options or, it's kind of worst case scenario, right? Because 0 of 0 is 0. So how are you having those discussions with owners, but how are you trying to get these rented? I know you said you're trying to get medical personnel and other people in there, but if that doesn't work, what's plan B?
Well, I think a little bit like what Mike talked about in the fact that, I think we've kind of forgotten that golden rule that we were taught when we were younger. It's, you should have a minimum 3-6 months reserves of, your bills and backhand
Sure.
and ready to carry you through things like this. And I think over time and generations, we've just kind of forgotten that part of life. And of course, then there's just then there's certain people that just can't, they truly do live paycheck by paycheck. And, we live in a state that's, very prominent, and there's a lot of people who cannot, afford to build up a decent savings.
Sure.
But, on the vacation rental side of things, I think this has really brought to light those people that truly, you have different people, a different type of investors in vacation rentals. You've got those that are really investing in a property and they're trying to maximize that dollar. And when we meet with clients, we're trying to really determine who they are and what their ultimate goal is. And really to make sure that they fit our model too, and they're worth bringing on at the end of the day, or they're going to be, or they have unrealistic expectations, right? And so, you have the people that are trying to maximize that dollar amount. Then you have the people who are purchasing, and it's really, it's about trying to offset costs. They can understand they're expecting that they're going to carry some debt on this property, right? But for them, they want to be able to use it, and they're trying to offset some of those costs. And then you have the people that inherit it. So, to them, it's a family home that they've had forever, and, bringing that, extra income is great. Some use it more than others. But I think this really has just brought to light the people, weeding out those people who, they don't have the stomach for this industry, because you don't really know from month to month what is going to happen, right? And I think a little bit like what you were saying, Chris, earlier, you got investors kind of pulling back at this moment. I think you've got a multiple effect going on right now. You not only do you have a tragic thing that's like happening right now that everybody's just freaking out. They have no idea what the economy is going to look like coming out of this thing. You have and not only that, just naturally, we're in an election year. People generally pull back at this time, right? Yeah. So this has really brought to light the people that just don't have a stomach for a vacation rental industry, and they're turning actually into long-term renters now. And so you're seeing that transition. But right now for us, literally like 0% occupancy in that department, which we've never seen before. But ultimately, it crushed our spring break session. I mean, literally within 1 week, we had over $500,000 worth of reservations that canceled in the first week that this whole thing took place. And that's kind of the last shot that we get in our industry, or in our neck of the woods, basically, that carries us through that kind of that lull until like Memorial Day weekend happens. Obviously people that are more in the mountains areas and their ski towns, they're different. There are different markets that are coming in there, and they're probably not going to see, I mean, the end of their season kind of got hit, but they're probably not going to be as, might not affected. Be as badly as we are. But it's really going to see, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when we come out into the summer season. Right now, those areas that have have kind of started lifting their bans a little bit, the Outer Banks and in Florida, as soon as they started lifting those bans, I mean, they're booked solid right now. And so it kind of gives them light to the end of the tunnel of what's going to happen when we come out of this. But right now we're seeing those people that are opening up. I mean, China, when they started opening up, it took them 10 days to start shutting down the amusement parks and everything, because all the tourist attractions were just jam-packed full, booked solid. People are stuck at home. And yeah.
Question though, I get, and this is kind of for you because this is your specialty, but kind of for the group also. Do you guys think this potentially shows a flaw in the short-term rental business model? Does this show, like, is this kind of a kryptonite? Now, obviously, this doesn't always happen. I get that, but this could cripple and bankrupt many, many people, right? Depending on how long did this happen. So do you, or do anyone on the panel, does this tell you that maybe there is a challenge with this whole model in itself?
I don't believe so. I like Mike, I was born into this business. I've been in this industry for 24 years now. And I've seen the vacation rental department or vacation rental industry just completely blow up over the last 10, 15 years. And I mean, we were around before there were software companies or anything that, these vacation rental homes, these vacation homes, they existed long before, the HomeAways and the VRBOs and Airbnbs. They were around. People, it was just harder to attract people. You're literally doing newspaper ads and stuff. So, I mean, they've seen the ups and downs in the markets. I don't think it's going to have an effect on it by any means. Right now, the only thing we're seeing is really an educational part of it. People and some slight shifts, really the cleaning side of things and how you're communicating that to the guests. We would turn over anywhere between 25 and 50 properties on every Saturday in the summertime in 5 hours, and people thrashed it. You had to have carpets cleaned and windows done. I mean, talk about needing to have your systems in place. You're turning over a ton of properties in 5 hours. Now you're starting to see people questioning whether or not they're going to have same day turnovers, and kind of giving that 1 day break to ensure thorough cleanliness of the properties. And so you're starting to see companies questioning back-to-back rentals, advising owners now against, and having washable bedding and, more duvet covers, things of that sort. Really shifting, you're used to seeing a cancellation policy of 30, 60, days out on vacation rentals, where hotels, you can call 3 days in advance and cancel without penalties. I think you're going to see a big shift in the cancellation policies. We as a company have changed our cancellation policies just to try and help the people that were coming in summer to stop canceling out of fear. So I think those are some of the shifts that you might see in the industry, but I don't think it's going to have a drastic effect. Like I said, this particular incident might affect the current people that are in the industry who may not have the stomach moving forward with it and want more consistency in their rental income. But, who knows, a year or two from now, those people might forget about this and try and enter back in.
That's true. Yeah. And so for those of you interested and want to know more, obviously give us your comments. We've got, Alex, I just wanted someone, Cali Valley, purchased a property in late February. It's still empty, impacted C19. Should I lower the rent to fill it? Not hurting for cash, but don't like empty properties, afraid of lowering rent will impact the market. What are your guys' thoughts? Anybody want to weigh in on that for them?
I'll take it. I think the number one rule in our industry is if it hasn't rented by this point, no matter what the situation is, it's generally a price point issue. It doesn't matter what the property looks like. I mean, it's not priced appropriately to what the property market is and what, but I think it's usually price point, because right now I think we've agreed on what most of the panelists have said is our properties are flying off the shelves. They're not staying vacant very long. We're, within 2-3 days are having multiple applications. So I think it's definitely a price point issue for sure.
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's vacant at this time, and it is an opportunity to potentially do some renovating. So if you're out hurting for money, and it's depending on what the condition of the property is, that always helps as well. I always say a better renovated home always generally brings a better tenant. So if you have that opportunity to do some renovations, do some cleanup, take that opportunity of this downtime. But then what, like Lisa said, it basically comes down to what we call walk it to market. You know, you ultimately continue to lower the price until you get to that point where the market accepts it.
Makes sense.
So let's, okay, anybody else wants to take a stab at this one? Let's shift gears. We had a question in the past, actually staying on the same topic. We had a couple questions in the comments, similar. Like, let's give some tactical advice. Like, we have a BrainTrust here. Let's give some tactical advice out. What to do if your resident does not pay? Maybe go around a little bit. Give us, maybe we'll start with, let's start with Ali. We haven't heard from him in a little while. Like, what to do? What should people do? Like, you're not getting rent. Next steps.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think first off is, you know, there's eviction moratoriums in place right now, so you got to kind of know where you're at in your municipality. But the way that we're approaching it is, number one is you got to get documentation around if there's a COVID impact, and different municipalities have different types of documentation they're requiring. So that's the first step. And I think what Michael was talking about is absolutely true, is like, you got to have the lines of communication. So that's one way to communicate, is like, hey, you got to give us your documentation. So we're going back and forth with people and keeping those lines of communication open. So that's step number one. You know, usually one of the biggest threats you use in rent collection is the threat of eviction and doing a 3-day notice, or, you know, starting that process. We stopped doing those this month, even though we could technically do it to get people queued up for whenever the eviction processes start again. But we just felt like it was the wrong thing to do and too huge of a risk right now from a PR perspective and all sorts of other reasons to go notice people. So we've kind of held off on doing that. So what we have done is we've engaged with people on, hey, pay what you can. We've come up with a creative payment plan strategy because we're trying to maintain occupancy. So we're actually extending people's leases on the back end and amortizing any deferred rent across a longer lease span, so that we can kind of give them, because, you know, what you don't want to do is come up with a payment plan that they absolutely can't pay whenever they, you know, do get money. And that's one of the, I think, the downsides of payment plans in general, is that once someone gets behind, then it's hard for them to ever catch up. And if the payments balloon over, you know, a short time, then they're never really going to be able to pay. So we try to elongate on the back end and give them a longer period to pay back the deferred rent. Now, the issue there is, I think, people still don't know what's going to happen in May and June. So, you know, I think it was Chris that said, like, May 10th is what you guys were looking at, is like, or maybe it was Michael.
Mike, yeah.
May 10th, yeah.
They look the same. It's okay, Ali. They have hair. We're not. They're the hair guys.
I think it's you and I who look the same. I don't know about
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
We're in the minority here. That's true.
I think that's part of the issue is around, like, we have an idea around to do the payment plans, but we're really kind of waiting to see what happens. So I don't know there's great advice on how to go get money right now. If people can't pay, they're not going to be able to pay. And then we've actually seen some extreme stuff. You know, we manage in Oakland, which is like an activist place, and we've got a rent strike letter from a building who's saying they're just not going to pay rent. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but there's like a movement around this concept of a rent strike. And some people have tried to bust that out on us too. And we're just kind of treating everybody the same. Communicate. We're holding in reserve, like, a notice of a potential eviction, but we haven't gone there yet because we kind of want to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I think there's also a way you can look on the landlord side as well. If you're a landlord that owns an income property, what can you do personally to help yourself out? And I don't want to give out, you know, financial advice, but I think there are some opportunities if you have a mortgage that they're actually deferring the mortgage for 3 months. Now, I looked into this very closely just because, you know, as an investor myself, and I look at it and say, okay, they're going to defer for 3 months, but what does that mean? Right now, it means one of three things. One is they're going to make you pay the whole entire amount on the 4th month. They're going to do something similar what Ali said with the rent, is amortize it and kind of, you know, put it over a few month period where you have to pay it back. And in some cases, they've talked about adding it to the end of the mortgage term, whenever that time is. So it's just something to look out for, but also be extremely careful with. Don't go out spending the money, and be careful. That way you can kind of have that buffer we talked about earlier. You know, and on the tenant side, I think the hard part about it, I think one of our biggest conundrums is that we're trying to let the tenant know that the rent is due, the rent is not free, but we also don't want to come across like collectors, right? Like we're just, all we care about is the money. But we also have to understand there's a push and pull here. The landlord, not all landlords are rich, right? Not all landlords are sitting there making millions of dollars a year, just collecting rent and swimming in a bed of money. There are people that are really seriously having financial issues, or maybe they're only 10% plus on their investment and they're going to lose 25% this month. Now what happens? They're in the negative, so they need to come up with money. And that doesn't only affect the landlord and the tenant, that goes down to maintenance people that need to go out there and go do the maintenance side of things, and the ability to pay the maintenance people. So that could affect a plumber. It can affect a cleaning person. It can affect the landscaper, a pool service person, where they're not going to be able to get paid. Mortgages, property taxes, insurance, all of these things add up to the point where, this is an effect that is a snowball. So the tenant has to understand the rent is still due. It's not free, but the landlord has to be understanding and try and work something out. And it's a very difficult, slippery slope, because like I said, I've been doing this. My family has been in this for over 40 years. And I can have stories from my uncle and my father of all the things that they've been through and all the crazy times and all the downturns, but we've never been through a pandemic. So, you got to take one day at a time, work together with each other, but still understand rent is due. And if you push it out too far, you may not be able to make it up.
Yeah, let me just jump in real quick. Just Michael, I think you stated it well. One thing that I didn't mention is when we say a rent deferment, we're still asking them to pay something now too, whatever they can. I think that's important.
Yes, of course.
If it's a total deferral, then they get into a big hole. And I think the key is explaining to them the rent's still due. Like rent hasn't been forgiven. So pay what you can now, and then we'll take whatever percent you had to defer and try to amortize it later.
I think one of the things I probably would add in there is, communication is key. And, you have most of these tenants are really good tenants. I mean, why would you want to get rid of a good tenant? I mean, everybody's in the same predicament right now. So it's, how can you work it out between the two of you? But at the end of the day, I think the only one thing that I would, key advice I'd say is looking at whether or not you are an individual property owner dealing with a house, or are you dealing with multiple units. And if you're dealing with multiple units, I think one of the key things is to ensure that you're also you're being consistent in your plans. And so you can't have any fair housing claims, making sure that whatever you are doing with one tenant, you're just kind of laying out the same payment plan options for everybody is probably something that I would put out there.
Yeah. I was going to add just real quickly that the documenting, because you have a legal document with your resident already to rent that property. So any changes you make to how you're going to accept money, or any change you make in how you're going to manage it for an owner, all of these things have to be very thoroughly and well documented. And I love what Lisa just said there at the end, that it has to be the same for everyone. You cannot go into this with this person has this issue and that person has that issue, and so we're gonna handle you. You can't. It has to be that rent is due. We have a period when we begin to charge a late fee, which right now I don't know anybody that is charging late fees, but all that stuff has already been written out in your contracts. And as you make every change to it, it has to be done consistently, and it has to be applied consistently. The only other thing I was going to add real quickly, with 6,000 units and in 7 cities, we kind of reasoned on the front end that we did not need to do this overall massive communication to every renter, reminding them that rent was due, or offering any like rent abatements or any type of reductions for paying on time. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our owners to collect rent for them. And so we kind of reasoned on the front end that there will be a certain percentage of the renters that are affected, but it won't be all of them. And we didn't think it would be a majority. And so far, our decision was, we're not going to communicate on the front end any big formal plan. Instead, rent's due on April 1st. And we will work on an individual basis with those residents that reach out on the front end. So we'll give them the ease of doing that and all the communication they need. But then as those that maybe didn't let us know that they couldn't pay rent, that we have to reach out to, we just document that. And what it ended up as, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, it ends up being a few percentage points of the total number of residents that we're actually having to put a plan and work with and document these processes with. And so I think that's a misconception right now about management and landlords, that kind of thing. And that is that everyone is unable to pay rent. I feel bad for those people that are in states where governors have come out and said, don't pay rent. And I can't imagine being in that scenario. That's got to be horrible for an owner where residents who can pay and are willing to pay and are able to pay are told not to pay. That's a bad scenario to be in. But for those that aren't in that scenario, look, a majority of the people out there, I'm not sure who said it earlier, but 95% of the people are, it was Mike, that 95% of the people are good. They're trying to work together. They're paying rent on time. I'm not sure if it was Mike or Lisa. I apologize for whichever one said that they had a group of people that had kind of reached out and said they were going to have difficulty, but many of those people paid rent in full. So they're just reaching out in advance to say, hey, this is going to be dicey, but they're still paying on time. I just think when I look back, I think that's a very encouraging thing, that for a vast majority of us as managers out there managing a lot of properties for investors, the reality is that if you've treated your resident well and you priced your property correctly and you put them in properly, then you probably still have a majority of them that are able to pay, and it's going to be okay. From the other thing I was going to say is that somebody said earlier that talking about investors, I don't know if it was a comment or something I saw earlier about investors and the need to have the 6 months reserves. And Mike, I know you were saying earlier that is one of the things that we would give advice for. You have to do that. You have to have your reserves in place. But I do know a lot of investors, and we manage for them right now, that have let us know that, hey, not only I had my reserves in place to cover my rents, it was all good. I just didn't expect to lose my job also. And so now I'm not just covering those rents, I'm covering my own bills. And when that gets factored in, my 6 months reserves, or, even 1 year reserves suddenly were reduced to 4 or 5 months. And, again, that's where your advice that you just said, Mike, of really looking at what is available to you as an owner is really important. So anyway, I
think that, and real quick, Chris, just to kind of reiterate what everyone said, I think that what's important for the people that are watching to realize is that, we all want to do the right thing, and we all want to make sure that we are, being compassionate. But the one thing I think that we all have to remember is that when a resident signs a lease agreement with a landlord or a property management company, that is a legally binding contract. And to void that contract without any written documentation that says that we are going to give a forbearance or we're going to give something, right now, everyone's in congruency and everyone is agreeing and everyone is getting along. It's the 3 to 6 months down the road when you don't have any documentation, as Chris very eloquently said, that you want to make sure that if you want to change the contract, you've got to make some addendums to the agreement that states that. Because if technically, if you're standing in front of a judge and you change the agreement and there is not written consent from both, and now I'm not an attorney, however, you want to make sure that you talk to an attorney, but you want to make sure that if you are you're changing the agreement as stated, document it and make sure you have an addendum to your lease agreement that says you're changing the rental payment and you're changing the agreement that has to be. And I'm not sure what your guys' thoughts are on that, but I think that, again, right now, everyone's in agreement, like, hey, let's just get along, let's do the right thing. But down the road, if you are standing in front of a judge and in the court of law, you have to make sure that you are doing what the agreement says and what the intention was and what the contract signed by both parties. That sometimes is not the same.
Not just that. If you find yourself in front of in a scenario where you are trying to evict, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months down the road from now, and you have the proper case where you provided information where it was accessible and it's easy for people to see, you provided it through emails or through phone calls, you tried to do the communication, and your resident never provided hardship, never tried to communicate, just simply tried to stay in a home, whether they lost their job or not, you're going to have what we're telling, and what the reason why we're acting the way we're acting is that taking the actions we're taking is that we want to have a strong case should we have to move that way in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. So true. Because again, I know from many down cycles that I've personally been through in the real estate and other industries that in the heat of the emergency, everybody wants to do the right thing. that sometimes get distorted down the road when the emotions fade and all of a sudden it's facts. And if you don't, take care of the documentation, like you said, Chris, and you don't, dot the I's and cross the T's when you're supposed to, and make addendums to your agreement and get it signed by all parties and change the agreement,
right,
you could potentially be setting yourself up for some litigation, downstream, I think.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ali.
I'll just jump in and just say real quick that I totally agree with that. But also I think we're in this like unprecedented situation. And I think what we definitely can easily see in places like California is there'll be a gigantic eviction backlog. And so the courts were already really backlogged before this started in certain municipalities. Now it'll be way worse. So you always want to have the documentation. As a property manager, you have to have the legal kind of like I's dotted and T's crossed. But at the end of the day, you're trying to manage the cash flow for your owner. And if you go down this eviction process, what I'm saying here is like try to like not do that as much as possible, even now more than ever, because you could end up with 12 or 18 months of no cash coming in if this goes on for a long time and the eviction courts are way backed up. So it's a balance. You want to have the threat there, but you also, I think, want to do everything you can to collect the money from the resident in place.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I want to hit maybe if you don't mind, let's we're about an hour mark. I want to hit on this question that is I'm personally passionate about, as well as I'm sure a lot of our viewers are as well. Like what future casting? Like a lot of us have deep expertise in the areas we're in, and I want to go around and have you guys spend maybe 2 minutes each, if you don't mind. It's like, what are you seeing as opportunities and current and near future in this market? You want to hit real estate, fine, hit real estate. If you want to hit other parts of the economy and where the opportunity you think will reside for entrepreneurs and or investors, hit it. So maybe go ahead, whoever wants to start off. Wow.
Who has
The guy with let's do the guy with the hair. Let's do the hair guy up in the upper right hand corner.
Oh my gosh. So look, I'm not again, I can't make any predictions for the future, but I will say that we started back in 2003, came through the crisis of 08, 09 when it started, and this just doesn't feel the same to me. We know that real estate pricing and real estate rental is usually a lagging indicator, and in some particular markets, they're going to get hit harder than others. But I don't foresee this. I don't foresee a large growth right now in foreclosures, in a sudden drop of pricing because the market gets flooded with houses. Maybe some rent contraction. Maybe there's a little bit of rent contraction out there as there are fewer. There may be fewer properties available. There'll also be fewer people that will be looking to move. More people are going to be staying put. We're seeing that already in our management companies. So, but I've been listening to all kinds of people talking about all the different opportunities, from buying businesses to all these little smaller companies that are going to need some type of assistance. So if you've got money stepping in as a money partner behind businesses, I'm not willing to do that. I've learned my lesson with enough dabbling in things I don't understand that I pretty much stick to what I know today. And so I'm going to stick with single family housing, and I still feel like we talked about earlier, the principles of it make it a good future investment. So
I think I'll take the next one. I think in the short term, you're since I seem to be the vacation rental person on here, on the vacation rental side of things, I think you'll see a shift in the type of clientele that you'll have. I think you're going to, in the very beginning, everybody feared what was going to happen. I mean, my entire department obviously scared, their jobs, and you have zero income coming in that department. And one of my first things I said in the very first week, I was like, no matter how long this goes, obviously, unless they have a shutdown and not allowing us to do rentals is a whole nother story. But I think as this thing hits in different areas in different countries, you're going to have there's a big clientele out there of people. There's a lot of people that have not been financially impacted, and they still have the means to take a vacation. And God knows that when this whole thing's over, the last thing they want to do is be home, right? And you have kids that are out of school. And so I think depending on when we come out of this in our area, you might see a shift in people maybe leaving sooner and doing vacations a little bit sooner. You have a large sector of people that are used to hopping on planes and going out of the country that could afford to do so, where a lot of people, tend to drive to, save a little bit more money. I think those that are used to hopping on planes, I think you're going to see them probably stay closer to home. They're probably not going to be as quick to jump on a plane and go into a different country right now, not knowing what's going on. So I think with that in the short term is going to take place in the vacation rental industry. I think, as you said, Chris, I don't think we're going to see what we saw in the market crash in 2006. But I think that, adjustment, no matter what, is due, right? We're in the longest upswing we've ever seen. We're heading, we're in election year on top of it. You got investors that are just kind of, hey, let's see what's going on. And it's just natural what happens. So as far as, long-term effect, ask me after November what we're looking at. But
yeah.
It's hard to say, but I don't think we're going to be suffering out of this, coming out of this like we did in 2006, 2008, coming out of that, financial crisis by any means at this point.
Ali, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think I agree with what Lisa and Chris have said. I also would say, it's been really an interesting time for all of us to just kind of slow down a little bit and get to know our families more. And, I'm constantly trying to stay in between the 4 and 8 year olds who are fighting with each other. And, life has slowed down a little bit. And then when as an entrepreneur, and I think about, oh, wow, this is an amazing opportunity to kind of take stock and understand kind of what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Crystallize our strategy and our focus, and see if we can, get better. This is, we're a venture-backed company, and it's an interesting time in that regard because, usually there's just grow, go. And even in that community now, it's well, we don't know what's going to happen. So you have this opportunity to kind of really focus on what you want to be great at, and then really go deep and be great at it. So, for us, one of the things that we want to do is scale to be the first national property management company in America for kind of small residential. So, really, and we've grown tremendously over 4 years. So we're really looking inwardly and trying to fix our processes and fix our technology and really get great at things that maybe we haven't been able to focus on because we've been growing so fast. So I think this is a huge opportunity. We try to kind of, look at the crisis through a lens of kind of, okay, what are the good things that can come out of it, so that when the opportunities present themselves, which we don't know what they're going to be from an investment perspective yet of the journey, then we'll be ready to pounce and we'll be on a more solid foundation.
Yeah. And last but not least, the king of the guy who's on the yacht, the Italian stallion.
Actually, great points. And on a personal level, Ollie, that's a great point, because if you can sit in your home, run a business, and right now I'm the PE teacher in our house. So I do a 1 hour PE class for my kids every single day. My wife is doing she's the smart one. So she does all the educational stuff because our kids are on Zoom, but being able to juggle all of that and learn that you can still run your business, having the employees being able to jump on video calls and, really learning that, okay, there's a lot of redundancies that we're doing in our business that we probably actually don't really need, and we can actually fix a lot of those things. There's a lot of aspects, especially the third-party property management, where we've all said it's always been a face-to-face business, but really you're only looking at, maintenance needs to be boots on the ground, showing property, unless you're doing self-showing lockboxes, but if the property's occupied, they need to be there, and inspections. Pretty much everything else can be done at the back office without having to be there in person. So looking at things like that. Also, a third-party management probably going to look at the fee structure, because you're looking at most of them collecting a percentage of revenue that comes in. If you're not collecting the rent right now, or you're setting up these long-term payment plans, you're not collecting on those right now.
Yep.
So that's going to affect a lot of those companies. And of course, there's opportunities to get disaster relief and get a PPP, potentially getting the loan there if it doesn't run out. Although I think I heard rumors they're extending some extra funds to that. But those type of things you're going to look at, and maybe it's not changing during a time of vacancy where you're trying to find a tenant, but maybe you're putting in a contract during a pandemic, which people would normally have laughed at until now, or putting a state of emergency in your in your state or country, that you might have to have some sort of flat fee that kind of combats that and, ultimately helps you get through that time. So things like that we're looking at it as a company. But on the investor side, the one thing we do know is that there is still a ton of money out there.
Yeah.
There is still a ton of private equity firms, venture firms, small family, high wealth offices that are still sitting on money, whether the stock market dropped the way it did or didn't, and whether it should have ever been where it was and if it was inflated. But they are still prepared to deploy funds. And whether that's going to be into companies or into real estate investments, is kind of yet to be seen. But I think that they're going to be sitting, waiting on the sidelines to see if there's any type of drop they can jump in and really, get some more investments under their belt.
I think the biggest thing that you're going to see is the office sector affected, because you have a lot of people that were forced to work remotely that just didn't want to make that leap. And you're going to have a lot of people coming out of this, I think, questioning the amount of space that they have and if it's necessary and cutting costs. And I think the office sector is probably going to see the biggest shift coming out of this.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you're going to see a lot of commercial strip malls and businesses saying, we're making remote work. And I know at Mind, not like everybody, right? Everyone is working remotely and they're seeing that, do I need all this square footage that I'm paying for? And so I think commercial eventually will actually see the biggest hit out of this. I think they will be the ones that are the, biggest victims that people aren't really thinking about. But I do believe that they will be the largest hit in the real estate business. I think you'll see a lot more people wanting to build out offices in their houses, maybe do some construction in their own current properties instead of moving. Let's make this office more of a real office as opposed to a dining room that there's no table there anymore. And so I think you'll start seeing that more to make it work. So I definitely think we will see that. Alex, any last parting words from your wisdom, sir?
Yeah, I'm thinking, well, my wisdom is really, it's the combined wisdom of everyone's here and everyone I talk to. So it's just been fascinating how people are coming together, what Mike said, and the hard work we put in. Ali is in the middle of this. It's just, and you, Steve, like the communication we're doing out in the world, and Lisa, your SDRs are in my heart, right? It hurts me. I want to sympathize with you. And Chris Clothier seems to be not affected. So
Chris is living the life, man. Chris and Mike, man, they've got the haircuts. They're living on the yachts. They're living the dream, man.
Yeah. So it's been a good group, but I want to think virtual and contactless. These are the things that I think where opportunity is. So when it comes to rental homes, there's a lot of different things that can fall under this. Restaurant industry, everything is going to get more virtual, more contactless. People's going to be a lot of germaphobes out there. We're going to go to the next level. And so that's where opportunity lies. I don't know where it is. That's why I'm serving people, but it's been a real pleasure speaking to you all here. And, we can't shake hands and, have a cocktail together, but this is it's not bad.
Shake hands again, Alex. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, everybody, thank you again. As Alex said, for everybody, taking the time away from putting on your upwards pajama tops and changing out from the top up. I appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody at BiggerPockets, as well as from Mind, Mike Catalano's company, Lisa's company, Chris Clothier's company, thank everybody for watching, because I think this information is very, very important. And I think it's important that we all, coexist with each other and learn from each other, because I think everyone here is a leader in the industry. And for those of you on BiggerPockets, you definitely want to look up everybody here that's on this program today, because these are all leaders in the industry that can definitely help you with whatever your needs are, whatever your situations are. And I know every one of them personally, that they're all willing to help and they're willing to give their time and their information. So for everybody that joined us today, everybody on BiggerPockets, everybody, just thank you so much for your time today. And on behalf of Alex and myself, I really appreciate you taking the time to, carve out to talk to us and help educate everybody that's watching, and hopefully we'll make some lives easier as a result of this.
See you guys in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. We'll see you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right.